Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this Backstage episode. I'm sorry, I briefly dozed off there. It was kind of it was almost like a pre-comatose state. Not completely comatose, but I'm getting there. We have some fun for you today, and this, for those of you who are new members, and we have more and more new members every day, so I feel like we kind of need to clue them into the joke here, so to speak. You've tuned into this thinking it's some sort of programming, no doubt, some sort of a show or something like that. It is only a show in so much as it occupies bandwidth on the internet. In all other respects,
no pretense whatsoever.
If you can find a goat rodeo on YouTube, I would switch to that now.
Yeah. That's right. We'll just give you a moment, you goat fans, to just move on over there. What is the word for goat? Because we have like porcine for pigs and bovine for cows.
I don't know.
And ursine for bears, canine, feline.
Yeah.
Goat kind.
Yeah.
I think, no, I'm not going to say that.
Oh, come on.
There was a version of the word ISIS in there somewhere, but I'm just not going to do that.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. Okay. That's nice.
Because
on second
because
thought.
as former Vice President Joe Biden would say, we're better than that.
Yeah, we are.
He was wrong then. He's wrong now.
Wrong now. No.
That's right. So this week, Bill Whittle, who is just back from the surface of the moon, is
The circus or the surface?
The what?
Did you say the circus of the moon or the surface of the moon?
Oh, no. I hadn't even thought. It's kind of a little bit of both. By the way, just before Bill has the chance to open his mouth and tell you what a great show that he's just done, this 4-episode podcast of the Apollo 11 What We Saw thing. I am now 45 minutes into the second episode of this as we record, and I found it so compelling that I actually almost refused to record this show today so that I could watch the rest of that. Now, some may call that laziness. Some may call that just avoidance of work, or just the fact that I don't really have a topic for this week's shows. But I maintain it was because of the compelling nature of Bill Whittle's commentary in that Apollo 11 series.
Thank you. Tells me that if I put another 5 minutes of work into episode 2, I wouldn't have to be here right now. But anyway, we'll just let that one slide.
I don't know if you guys can hear this, but right now is when the recycling pickup truck comes. And there's this roaring engine. And for some reason, even though my street is a pass-through street, like if you turn onto my street, you can go out the other end, they feel compelled to back up and use the backup beeper noise. Like 20
That's
times.
for your own protection.
It's a robot, where America's great jobs, like the job that used to be the guy hanging on the side of the garbage truck who would have to jump off while the truck was moving and grab a can and dump it in. And then this giant press would come down that was certainly adequate to crush him. Those great jobs are gone now, and it's being done by one guy in a truck with a little hand that comes out from the side and automatically picks up the trash.
The claw.
Living out where I do in the semi boonies, we still have the 2-man truck.
Oh, really? So you got the guy guy hanging on the side, and you live in like cold weather areas, so that guy's freezing his butt off out there.
Oh man, you should see the way these guys dress in the winter. I mean, it's actually not as bad here. It's 7,400 feet, believe it or not, snow-wise, than it was back in St. Louis where I grew up. In the Midwest, the snow comes in like November, and then it just sits
and
there.
It's brown and gray instead of white.
Yeah, until the spring thaw. We might get more inches per year, but typically everything we get is gone in 3 days, maybe a week, and then we start again with the next snowstorm.
That's because you're closer to the sun.
It's right. That's right. That was an excellent George Carlin reference, by the way. I caught that.
He's up there on Icarus Mountain. Okay, so Bill Whittle, I've stalled long enough for you. This week, you get to host 2 episodes of the show, despite the unwieldy burden that you've endured over the last several weeks and what you've put our members through. So what would you like? What would you like to explore this week in your episodes of Right Angle?
2 disturbing trends, and I guess we'll do this one just as the regular release show, and then it's nice that we get to release all 4 of them now. Again, thanks to the generosity of members who basically got their free tote bags and then said, take these and distribute loaves and fishes among the people. Two different shows, 2 different trends that I find really disturbing and worth looking at. One of them is just this open anti-Americanism on the part of not just AOC and Omar and the squad, but also on the women's soccer team. And this idea that somehow we are supposed to be grateful that somebody's spitting in the eye of everything we believe in and celebrate this, and any kind of pushback at all is racism, sexism, some kind of ism, definitely, that is absolutely not who we really are. And I'm just really, really tired of it. And I think most people are too. So
there was a big Twitter flap because Megan Rapinoe. I apologize for all the mispronounced names on this show, but it comes largely because I don't watch a lot of television and I don't know how things are said.
Scott, you said one of my favorite things ever. Never make fun of somebody for mispronouncing a word because they learned it from reading. And
That's right.
I have taught that to my sons. Believe it or not, I pass that along.
That's my excuse. That's what I'm going to call it. It's anyway. I saw this big flap that erupted because apparently Megan signed an autograph for some kid, and the people were complaining that she didn't make eye contact with the kid. And I thought, get off the woman, give her a break. Do you know how hard it is to write your first name? And she they're all over her just because she's trying to concentrate. That's the big line that you start first from top to bottom,
Yeah. I think I also kind of, on reflection, I kind of also want to go a little bit into this. This is the lesson that must be beaten into us during this last 3 or 4 year period, that women are not only as good as warriors as men, but even better. So now we have a woman, James Bond, and another franchise bites the dust. And maybe we'll just call this one women's issues. I don't know. But it's like, it's everybody knows that this female James Bond is going to tank, and once again you think, why would they ruin the franchise? It's like it's a no loss for them. Either it does well and they get to crow loud about it, or it destroys James Bond, and that's the mission: destroy James Bond, destroy Luke Skywalker, destroy all of this stuff. Maybe I'll just do the Bond thing.
Yeah, you know what? I have so much to say about where Bond has gone right and wrong in the whole Daniel Craig era, if that's what you want to call it, that I'll give you 5 minutes on that. Easy.
Great.
Well, and Bill, I think this is a great topic because I have also heard of James Bond.
Excellent. Marvelous. So let's just do that then.
All right. Love it.
And then the other one is something I've been running into a little bit with the work I've been doing, and that is, I don't exactly know the angle on this yet. I think it's probably going to be something along the lines of how to weigh evidence, because I've been dealing with some of these guys in the moon landing hoax thing, and when you see the evidence they present, you're literally just flabbergasted. You're just plain gobsmacked, at how weak it is. And I just took a quick look at what I thought was always their strongest case. It's not a strong case, but I always thought it was their best case. And that's the Van Allen radiation belts. And I read in like the second paragraph on the Apollo missions that the reason we didn't take the radiation dose they claim that we take, which we could have survived anyway, was because we flew over them. The orbit of the moon is inclined at an angle to the radiation belts, and unless you go on those 2 times of the month when you have to go right through them, you can either fly over them or fly under them. And if they didn't know that, they should have. And I've seen like things where it's like, here's a picture of the 3 astronauts. You can see how depressed and guilty they look, having just been, in quarantine, right? Having just been a part of this great swindle on the part of the American people. And you see this picture, and it's claimed as evidence. And then you zoom back, and you show the original picture uncropped. And Richard Nixon is 2 inches away from their faces, talking to them. They're listening to the president, and immediately after that, there's a joke, and all of them are laughing hilariously. So, it's just shocking.
I forward a lot of emails to Bill because people are directly addressing him, and I get the email that comes in from the website. But there was an email today that I just thought I would have forwarded it to you if I had looked up the guy's email address and it turned out he was a member, but he was not a member. And so, which explains a lot. And he was endeavoring once again to save you from your yawning ignorance about the fact that of this that nobody really landed on the moon, and that you just need to examine it, and then you're telling other people they need to be open-minded, but why can't you be open-minded?
I'd be delighted. I've already looked at all of these things. I need to have a moon landing debate, honestly. I really do. I need to get it out of my
to me, because I don't hear normal people doing this, I just wonder, is this just like Bill's little thing that he just can't let go of, like people, or are there a lot of people out there who think this way? And I don't know the answer to that because I don't get out much.
Let me give you an example. One of the critics of the moon landing, who thought the whole thing was a hoax, said couldn't have happened because if the astronauts had gone through the Van Allen belts, it would have fried them like being in a microwave.
Well, they didn't go.
And my first thought was, but microwaves don't emit radiation. They use electromagnetic energy, but they don't emit radiation in the sense that we're used to it. So how can you compare it to a device that doesn't emit any radiation? If the microwave oven is a real thing and the Van Allen belts are a real thing, turns out they are, you can actually measure how strong the Van Allen belts are, and you can get a dose. And what it turns out is that the astronauts took about 1/3 of the total amount that is considered safe for nuclear workers in the nuclear industry, 5 rem. They took about 1.5 rem, and guys who are either working with medical imaging or flight crews that are up above most of the atmosphere, they're allowed to take 5. So, yeah, they took a little extra dose. And well,
see, that's not my point. Because the details of it are not my point. My point is, how many people like this are there really?
But this is my
point. Are there a bunch of people
I was
out
dancing
there?
around it. What I was really basically trying to say is this. Somebody says something like, if they'd done it, they would have been fried like they went through a microwave oven. That's on one end of the scale. On the other end of the scale are 13 Saturn V launches. 13 Saturn V launches over the course of 6 or 7 years, witnessed by tens of millions of people in person, including me. And you really actually want to say, oh boy, I don't know. There's a contradiction here somewhere. I mean, yeah, you got all this rockets and hardware and billions of dollars of stuff and 300,000 people employed for 10 years and all that. But this guy says that it would fry you like a microwave, so I suppose it never happened.
This is how they prepared their TV dinners on their way to the moon.
My point
When they went through the Van Allen belt, it just heated up the Salisbury steak.
Nobody has the ability to weigh evidence and to look at things critically. And unlike them, I remember, what's his name? I'm not going to mention him because he's a fairly loathsome guy. He's basically like, it didn't happen. And in the space of 6 or 7 minutes, he said, NASA gave the Dutch a piece of petrified wood for moon rock. And I'm thinking, that seems unlikely. And so let's have a look at this petrified wood moon rock. No. And when you see this thing, you know what moon rocks look like? Yeah. They're gray and they're rocks, right? This thing is a brown chunk that looks like petrified wood. And then you find out that there were 2 Dutch artists in 2007. Here are their names. This is a joke that they made. And the entire launch of 13 Saturn V's, forget all the Gemini launches and all the rest of it, 13 Saturn V's built to go and fly into space, proven not to have happened, because somebody says that NASA sent this gag to the Dutch, by the way, which weighed about half of the total samples brought back from the moon on Apollo 11. It's like, here, take half of them.
And by the way, I happen to know that the Dutch turned that petrified wood into a petrified shoe.
That stinks.
In any event.
The point of your episode is not necessarily the particulars of the moon situation, but how does one evaluate evidence when one hears things about which one does not have firsthand information?
Correct. And I think the main point of what's going on here is that we have been so conditioned by movies to expect the twist that when there's no twist, we just don't believe it. Because in the movies you see all of the sheeple falling under the clever guise of the supervillain, but the hero gets to figure out what the actual truth is.
How many minds were destroyed by Capricorn 1?
They say Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing, and again, I'm doing a firewall on this, and I got to get it done by Saturday. But it's like, well, listen, Einstein, Stanley Kubrick actually did fake the moon landing, and he faked it a year before the moon landing, and it was called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now here's a picture of his moon landing. Here's a picture of the real moon landing.
Yeah, I was going to say,
They
if
don't look
Kubrick had
anything like each other. Nothing.
If he had faked the moon landing, the cinematography would have been much better.
Yeah.
Or the moon would have been more interesting, because Stanley Kubrick's moon is a lot cooler than the real moon. But it's this like my point, right? And Kubrick's his Orion craft lands on the moon, and just as it's landing, there's a big puffy cloud of dust that comes out, and then the legs take the shock, and that seemed like a reasonable thing to expect. Except when we actually landed on the moon a year after that, we found out the dust doesn't behave like that at all. The dust comes jetting out like it's streams of water because there's no air, and this is the thing that is just like, honestly.
So, and forgive me for doing this, Bill, but what are you going to do with this episode to prevent it from becoming a much shorter version of the Stratosphere Lounge?
I'm going to try to explain to people that that a person saying that something happened can counterbalance somebody else saying that something happened. But if there are real things in the real world, you have to say, here are 13 launches of a rocket that's 365 feet high against a guy who says, no, that's impossible. And if you can't make that distinction, you've got a real mental problem, a real mental problem.
Well, I'm still having a fight with people online because I'm not into all the conspiracy theories, but one has a certain appeal to me. And I cannot seem to convince people that the United States of America did not elect Donald Trump as president of the United States. I think the whole thing was faked. I think it's all Hollywood.
Anyway.
I mean, that's just so outlandish.
Yeah, the hard part on the firewall is so that I don't explode. I just need to keep it accessible and kind of lighthearted and friendly and just like...
Man.
There's another trash truck, by the way, outside my window now.
I can't hear it if
I feel like I live at the landfill. Like they're not taking trash from here, they're bringing it. Okay, so Stephen Green. This is the bar has been set pretty high.
It has been, and I'm just going to duck right under it.
Well, that's what I figured. I was hoping that you were going to limbo lower now.
Yeah, I covered this tiny little story for PJ Media yesterday, and it went huge. I can't believe the reaction to this, so I figure I'd get your guys' input on it. There is a young, fairly successful business consultant named, let me make sure I get her name right. I don't have it in my notes, but I'll pull it up before the thing. In New York, I believe it was, and overheard an argument at what I think she was fairly. She didn't want to name any names, so she was fairly obscure with things, but I think it might have been a New York publisher. It was a fairly quiet argument, or at least that's how it started, between a young writer, a woman, and her boss, a bit older, going over some edits on the young woman's work. And it started to get kind of heated. The conversation got kind of loud because the young writer, probably in her late 20s, spelled hamster wrong. She spelled it hampster with a P instead of hamster with
That's the British way.
And yes. Actually, no, in Britain they call hamsters a torch.
Actually, I think they call hamsters lovey.
Yes.
But
anyway, so the young woman is getting upset because the boss, she says, doesn't have any right to tell her how to spell hamster when she's been spelling it with a P her entire life. This is how she spells the word. And the boss is trying to be calm and reasonable and says, well, you know what? Let's go to dictionary.com and look it up.
Pointless.
The
And young woman
who runs that organization
refuses even to look because objective reality has no measure against her feelings about how this word is supposed to be spelled. And there's more to the story. We'll get into it on the segment. But this thing has just got so many angles. And last time I looked, I think the column was up over, at PJ Media, was up well over 600 comments. So, I mean, people are really responding to this thing. It's just, it's the nuttiest story I've ever heard.
Well, if she's supposed to get an $800 a week paycheck, I think they ought to pay her like $33 and then explain to her, but this is how I write 800. And this is this is my conception of 800.
Yeah.
And who are you to tell me? I've been writing 800 like this my whole life.
Yeah.
Here's your $800. Stop crying.
And the thing is, she might have gotten this in her head. There was apparently a thing back in the 90s when she would have been the right age to watch this. This hamster dance things. There was Hampton the hamster, who the name of this dancing video was I think Hamster Dance, because it was a combination of Hampton and hamster. And so this young millennial kid would have been the right age to kind of soak that in, but rather than take correction, goes on an offensive against her own boss, trying to just make some edits to her work.
Should have plenty of time to look up spelling of words since she's unemployed. That'd be my position anyway.
Man.
There is something about it's what is the old saying? Was it Mark Twain who said something like or Will Rogers who said that the problem with people isn't that they don't know much, is that they know so much that just ain't so.
I thought that was Reagan.
And
actually.
Reagan.
Reagan I think was quoting Will Rogers.
Was he? Okay.
But I could be wrong about that. And it was originally in 2 Corinthians 5.
I Corinthians. How many times do I have to explain that to you?
Sorry, this is now a reference to something you haven't seen that we talked about before.
Backstage.
That's right. Anyway, what was my point? You can't dislodge wrong ideas from people's heads. I saw a video, or back then it was probably a film years ago, where they were interviewing students who were graduating from Harvard with science degrees. And they were actually in cap and gown. They caught them on their way to the arena or whatever. And they were interviewing them, asking them why it is warmer in the summer and cooler in the winter. And they had lots and lots of graduating Harvard students who believed that the reason was because the Earth is closer to the sun in the summertime and further away in the wintertime. And that they had gotten this idea, somewhere along the line in second grade maybe. And all of the science education that they'd had since was not able to dislodge it.
No, it's the tilt of the Earth on its axis.
We're actually closer to the sun in northern hemisphere summer than we are in
No, I think it's the other way around. I think the southern hemisphere is closer in the summer and further away in the winter.
I'm not even going to venture a guess.
But in any case, that's a minor effect. The big effect is the tilt of the Earth on its axis, and if it's away from the sun, it's like adjusting the flashlight so the light is more spread out.
Yeah, right. Okay, so
when you twist the front of the flashlight.
Yeah, if they can fake a moon landing, why can't they teach us why it's warmer in the summer?
But they did.
This is the topic that I would like to explore. And there are so many much more incendiary things in the news right now. And really, sadly, this one does not avail itself of clickbait headlines. But I just thought this was actually one of the best things I've read in a long time, or the most interesting things anyway. Comes from the Washington Post, a story about the fact that the Trump administration, in the Interior Department of the Trump administration, is in the process of moving people from the Bureau of Land Management, as many leaders and managers of that organization as possible, out to the west of the United States of America, to get them out of Washington, D.C., and move them out to where most of the land that the Bureau of Land Management manages is.
But the cocktail parties all suck in Salt Lake City.
Ding, ding. It's like, oh, no, New York is where I'd rather stay.
Fresh air, Times Square.
Please. It's a great idea.
I want a talking pig.
Yeah, and this, and of course, this is a problem because apparently the Washington Post tries to make it sound like 85% of the people who work for the federal government are already outside of the Washington, D.C. area. But I'm guessing a large number of those people are the people in the U.S. military who aren't stationed, and they're always counted as in the total federal workforce, and who would be outside of Washington, D.C. And that there are some 9,000 employees of the Bureau of Land Management who are scattered out and about the country, largely in the West. Federal government owns some 10% of all the land in the United States.
Oh, yeah, but you get out west, in Colorado, it's like 60%. Nevada, I think it's 80%.
It's a lot of forts and ports.
Yeah.
Colorado is where they want to put some of these people. And so apparently there are several cities in Colorado.
The Californians screwed us over enough. Now they want to send people here from Washington. I thought this was a good idea at first, but no, we're you know what? We're closing the damn border.
So instead of seeing this as a great way to put government officials in closer touch with the people for whom they work, the Washington Post and many of the people they interviewed see this as a way of essentially chasing off career bureaucrats who are part of these organizations in Interior Department or Bureau of Land Management or any number of other agencies. And by saying basically, we want you to move out to, Rifle, Colorado, a lot of people won't want to do that because they've got roots in Arlington, Virginia,
Genius.
So anyway, this is one of the things that Republicans have said they believed in for a long time was making that bureaucracy smaller and making it more dispersed around the country. And here it is, sort of the least likely conservative of all, Donald Trump's administration, that is accomplishing this, like a number of other things that the Trump administration is doing that to the shock of many and the dismay of others. Anyway, I just thought this would be fun. And there's some other stuff I'm kind of holding back from you that are reasons why we shouldn't do this that I'd like you to engage during the course of this episode.
Excellent.
Okay. Let's roll.
So that'll be it for now. We are going to change shirts and crank up put new film in the camera. Do you have any more cans of film? You guys are all stocked up?
Those 50-foot rolls of 8mm, they run out in about 5 minutes. I've been shooting blanks here for the last 22 minutes.
I've got the silver-coated glass plates, and I have to put in 30 of them every single second, and it just gets a little time-consuming.
It's actually not so much a video as a moving daguerreotype.
Correct.
I mean, it's very... Oh, by the way, speaking of which, did you hear the recording that was recently released? It was like the first known recording of the human voice that was done in 1860. And the guy who did it basically looked at the idea of photography and said, well, gee, if we can capture what the eye can see, can we capture what the ear can hear? And he used what do they call that? Lamp black or something like that on some sort of a cylinder, and he captured the sound waves which made lines in the lamp black. Unfortunately, in his lifetime, the guy never got to hear what he recorded because he had no machine to interpret the scratches that he made. But anyway, now you can hear him apparently singing a little line from a nursery rhyme. Thanks to modern technology, they have cleaned it up. Now, it still sounds really spooky. And frankly, I would use it as a soundtrack for a horror movie. But you can go to YouTube now and hear this recording from 1860 of some guy's voice. And all I thought was, someday, 100 years from now, 130, 150 years from now, somebody's going to be listening to my voice and going, man, that's really spooky. Yeah. I can't make any sense of what he's saying. It's a creepy noise, but isn't it neat? So if you've been enjoying the spooky, creepy noises that you've been hearing on our shows all this time, we appreciate the financial support that you provided to make it possible for us to do so. And frankly, we have tried to improve this product at every step along the way and been stymied almost as often as we've made the attempt. But we have actually made it better thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com. And our site is getting better every day as a result of your efforts as well. We have more and more people who are signing up, especially since Bill's new Apollo series came out. People are finding out about that and wanting to be part of this effort. And we are just really grateful to those folks. We're going to record some more episodes of Right Angle. We're going to do some 47 shows this month, thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com. Yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it? So for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this happen.